Well, that was the most 90s FMV to ever 90s. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I'm here checking out RayTracers. Unusual name considering the current circumstances of PC gaming, but whatever. I saw this on a video on the PS Digital, which is like a HDMI mod for the PlayStation 1 on the Digital Foundry channel, and I thought, you know what, that game looks awesome, I want to give it a try. I've never heard of it before, so let's just go and give it a go. And I am emulating it in BizHawk, because I'd like to tell RetroArch to go suck a fat one, but it crashes so much as you get to the word fat, so yeah, it's not like I'd be able to hear it anyway. So, RayTracers is pretty simple to understand. It's an arcade racing game. You have a car. You have two different modes, chase and time attack. Chase is pretty simple. You just got to get to the end of the stage within the time limit, which is surprisingly easy, even on the normal difficulty. Like, these arcade ports would usually ratchet up the difficulty a bit in order to make sure that you didn't get through it, like, on your first try. And considering there's, like, infinite continues, you could do that anyway, but still, it's surprisingly easy on normal difficulty. I didn't bother trying it on hard, and we'll get to why, but yeah, basically, you just got to get to the end of the stage, and then there's a boss at the end that you need to take out. There's 4 of those stages, a boss rush, and then a final boss. And the mechanics are very simple. Now, when I saw this on the Digital Foundry channel, I thought to myself, it would be cool to play this, you know, like a bit of an arcade racing game with a little bit of car combat, and just some interesting tracks to go with it, but it doesn't have much of either going for it. You see, the entirety of the combat before the boss fights is just bump into the dudes a few times, and they'll eventually blow up, depending on the car. The green car that I've got right now can destroy almost anything within 1 or 2 hits, which makes it really useful for these sorts of stages, because it even does a ton more damage to the bosses than all the other cars. The other cars also have stats of acceleration, top speed, and turning. The green car also happens to have the highest turning, which makes it my favorite car in the game because, well, if you turn too hard in this game, you start going into a full-on, well, it's not a skid. It looks like a skid, but it's not really a skid. It's just a really, really sharp turn that's kind of hard to control, to the point where you'll end up smashing into the walls almost every time. And it's just unsatisfying to drive all the other cars, because as soon as you need to go around an even relatively sharp bend, you'll just find yourself going into this really intense turn that's just hard to control, and you'll go straight into the wall. Doesn't help that the camera stays in the exact same hovering position behind your car and doesn't turn to give you an idea of where the road you need to go is, so it's not great. Not very fun to control at all, unless of course you have the high turn cars which don't go into that skid, so you just make the turn, and it's relatively simple to do. And the car combat itself, again, it's really simple. There's no weaponry, there's nothing along those lines. It's just, you slam into the side, and that's it. For the bosses, you just need to catch up to them, which means applying a bit of speed or applying a bit of nitro. Nitro is the same across every car, it just accelerates you a lot faster and increases your top speed while the nitro is turned on. But you have a limited amount of it, and you get a score bonus at the end if you don't use very much of it. But if you're on the green car like this one, you really don't need to put much effort into it. You just hold on to all that nitro until you get to the boss fights, and then use the nitro to speed up, doing a little bit of extra damage to all the bosses and get them down just that little bit quicker, because if that time limit runs out, you'll just slow down and then stop. And considering that I was playing on another car, and this car would just barely be about to touch the opponent before the time limit ran out, and I'd just fall behind, and that happened to be twice in a 6-mission playthrough, oh man, it started to annoy the shit out of me. The rest of the driving isn't really that satisfying either. The turns aren't that intense, the courses aren't particularly interesting, although they do at least look nice for the PlayStation 1. But the turns are just not interesting to take. There are, like, jumps and pits in the road, but they aren't particularly satisfying to go on. And considering that you lose speed and time is of the essence if you're off-road anyway, you just want to stick as close to the middle of the road as possible. I mean, sure, you could use the nitro, but if you're going for a high score, which seems to be the only point of this game, considering that there's high score tables that for some reason don't automatically get saved to a memory card. You have to go do saving manually in the options menu. So guess why I went to the high score menu and thought to myself, oh, my scores aren't here. That's a bit weird. But yes, the only thing that's even remotely interesting about these games are the bosses, but on normal difficulty, they attack so infrequently that their attacks are actually really easy to avoid, and considering that I'm on the green car, they take very few hits to take down. There's a boss rush, which you'd think would be interesting as the 5th mission, but all of the bosses have their health cut in half, so I was able to take down a couple of them before they were even able to get an attack out, which was honestly quite ridiculous. As a result, the game just doesn't feel particularly fun to play. The driving physics are uninteresting unless you're going for a sharp turn, in which case they're really fucking annoying. The combat is basically nothing. You just run into cars a couple of times. And the thing is, the regular cars, at the very least, you don't want to even do that. Because if you do, you'll just be slowed down, which kind of defeats the purpose. As I said, you've got a time limit going in the top left corner at all times. There's actually one thing that I thought was interesting at first, and that was the fact that the rear view mirror seems to actually, well, not the rear view mirror, I should say, the back window actually has some rendering on it, which I thought was cute. But then I noticed what it's reflecting, and it just doesn't seem to make much sense to me, because despite the fact that that's the back window, and it shouldn't be able to reflect this in any sort of way, it's reflecting what's in front of you. I don't know why. Is that a thing? Like, if you look at the rear window from like a third-person view behind the car, does it reflect what's in front of you? Is the angle good enough to do that? I don't think it is. I don't think it is at all. It just seems really weird to me. It looked really impressive at first, and then I looked at it and I'm like, oh, that doesn't look right. That does not look right at all. There is also music, but the sound of the engines and the combat is so loud that it gets drowned out. And it also feels weird when you come up on a boss and it sounds more like a dinosaur than a warning klaxon. It's a bit weird. It's just a bit weird. There is also a secondary mode, and that's Time Attack, where it gives you 4 separate circuits, one of which you play in the game, but the other 3 are just like exclusive to that mode, where you can either race by yourself to beat your best time, or you can race a rival. Racing by yourself is just no fun because the driving mechanics aren't that fun to begin with. But racing with a rival is interesting because it's got rubber banding in the absolutely most frustrating way imaginable. Now, rubber banding, in case you don't know the term, is how cars will automatically catch up from behind you in order to continue to make a race interesting, even though you might be a little bit too far ahead. Well, this game does it in a weird way, where the AI racer is the one that's rubber banded, but in this really bizarre way. So when you're racing the AI racer, you'll be just barely behind it. And no matter what car you're using, and remember, all the cars have different top speeds, so if the enemy car has the same top speed all the time, you'd expect them to be affected by that in different ways. The slower car might not be able to catch up on a straightaway, but the fastest car might be able to. But no matter what car you're driving, whether it be the slow-ass one or the one that's really quick, you'll be stuck behind the AI at the exact same distance the whole time when you're on a straightaway. And you have to wait for the AI to manually slow down, like it's on a path that is expected to follow to the letter at all times. So you have to wait for it to slow down at very specific parts of the course and then try and find a way to get ahead of it. But as I said, the speed on it is very strange, to the point where it can speed up and slow down at almost at will. It feels like it's at will, but it's probably on rails. So there'll be parts of the course where you'll be thinking to yourself, I can't make the attempt to overtake him because if I run into him, it's just going to slow me down and I'm not going to be able to get in front of him. So you're hanging behind him thinking, when's my opportunity to get ahead? There doesn't seem to be one. And I know that there is one AI thing that you have to beat in order to unlock it as a car. There are unlockable cars, One you get by beating beating the chase mode with everybody. One you get by beating it in time trial, and then the one that you unlock unlocks another one if you beat chase mode with it. But that would mean replaying chase mode something like 6 times. And considering that it doesn't change at all, it's just boring. It just doesn't seem to be worth playing it more than once. And even then it's a bit iffy. And also, chase mode is like 20 minutes. You can beat chase mode in 20 minutes on your first go, because that's what I did. And all of the time trial tracks, not only do they not have like time records from the developers to beat, it's a bit weird, they all have the same record when you start it up. But again, there's only 4 courses, so you'll see everything there is to see there in about 10 to 15 minutes as well. So, for a PlayStation 1 game, it has very little in the way of content, and considering that it's not a very satisfying game to begin with, I would just argue it's not really worth playing, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. The driving is uninteresting, it looks alright, but that mirror just sets me, the reflection in the back window just sets me off something awful. The sound is just not great at all. There's only one thing which really saves this game, and that's the crappy 90s FMV that you get at the very end of the chase stage. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's some of the best copyright infringement and cringy 90s dialogue that I've seen in a long-ass time. It's great. It's legitimately great. But it's not worth playing the game to see this. Especially since in order to see all of the cutscenes, you have to beat the game in chase mode multiple times, and it's not worth it. So yeah, it's just not that great. I was hoping there would be one of those, I was hoping there would be one of those hidden gems that people are always going on about, that these retro console libraries always tend to have. It feels a bit weird saying that the PS1 is retro considering I grew up with it, but well, that's just the way these things go, I suppose. But yeah, in this case in particular, the mechanics just aren't that fun. And it's a PlayStation 1 game, so you know what that's like when it comes to the presentation. So, no, I wouldn't recommend it. Go play Scars. Go play Gran Turismo. That still holds up. Go play Max Power Racing. There's a couple of other games I need to get around to in the racing genre when it comes to this. Speed Power Gunbike is one of them. But yeah, this just isn't worth it. It won't be long until I get to the FMV. That's like the one thing that's worth it in this game. Then I do a bit of time attack gameplay, but it's not worth watching. Just save yourself the trouble. You've seen the most interesting parts of the game already once you get to the FMV. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.
I am Kaiser, and the roads belong to me.
ha ha! I didn't want it to come to this, but...
Brody!
Yo, Cindy! Been a bit heavy-handed with the makeup today, huh?
Yeah. That's some funny joke.
Ha ha ha!
Dad. They did it. In the car you designed.
I'm always ready to pick a fight with you.